Do not let friends that do not know what they're talking about give you advice on your relationship. Be very, very careful. Protect the garden from the pesky bugs that are trying to invade it.
Not only is there this inclination of go and vent what challenges you're having to your friends and your family, not the one person that's causing it. There's a very encouraged culture to do that because there's this huge belief that your partner shouldn't be your everything and that that's a bad thing and that's super toxic. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals, welcome back to the very one and only Conscious Couples podcast. For episode number 115, we have your trust issues aren't just from your partner. They're from the past. They're from potential family members. They're from past friends. Emilia and I are coming off Relationship Talks virtual event number 34, and we had some big breakthroughs there. Before we jump into this episode, as always, we want to thank Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show and so many others. Thank you for bringing self-improvement, personal development, professional development, and mental health positive impact into the world. We really appreciate you. As always, sweetheart, ladies first. What is your intention for today's episode?
My intention for today's episode is to help our listeners and our incredible community be able to come together on an episode that pulls forward those breakthroughs that we had on Relationship Talks event number 34, and doing so in a way that's deeply meaningful for you as you listen to this podcast episode, to help you recognize that the trust issues that you might have or that might be bubbling up and putting on the struggle bus aren't just from your past and your past partners at that. In fact, it has a lot to do, more than we give it credit for, more than a lot of us have heard, but research shows has a lot to do with our friends and the guidance that we're heeding in moments of challenge through relationships.
So after every Relationship Talks virtual event, Emilia and I sit down and we unpack it. We do what's called an experience review. Most important win, most important improvement, look at the data, look at the chat. What did we learn? What can we bring back to the listeners? So for those of you who did attend the event, thank you so much. For those of you who didn't, you did miss out. We missed you very much. We hope you are at the next one. So, sweetheart, the event was, you remember the title better than I do.
Yeah. So who is your partner getting bad advice from? And we locked this Relationship Talks event. We really grounded it in another movie, which our community is adoring and I'm really grateful for. So we conveyed this episode topic and the conversations that we had around this, which really helped us all understand who are we getting bad advice from? And in particular, reflecting who is our partner getting bad advice from? And we locked it in on How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, which is a movie with Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson. Kate Hudson playing character Andy and Matthew McConaughey playing Benny Winnie. And we use those characters because they're two friends who just so happen to be colleagues, or exemplary examples of what not to do and who not to listen from. And then we took the event and went from there, and it really resonated.
And Benny Winnie is also known as Benny Boo Boo Bear.
Boo Boo Bear.
If you have not seen How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, it is hilarious.
It's a great rom-com.
And it is a great rom-com. It's an over-exaggerated version of what many of us have experienced in the past. It is hilarious, and I enjoyed that tremendously with you.
As did I.
Seriously. Okay, so the couple takeaways that we got from the event. The first one, I gotta use my phone here. So I'm going to read the definition. So Emilia and I, before every Relationship Talks event, we go through what we're going to do. She creates the content, and then I kind of look at it. And so I remember when I first came across this definition, this slide that Emilia created, I was like, whoa. So here it comes. True friends offer you support, improve your quality of life, promote self-confidence, provide honesty and unconditional love, and most importantly, they help you progress without concern of their own gain. AKA, how many of us have friends who never, ever, ever had their best interest at heart, but actually had our best interest at heart? So in the event, I asked for a show of hands. Who here has ever had a friend who disliked an intimate partner and who an intimate partner disliked that friend? AKA, who here has ever had an intimate partner who didn't get along with one of their close friends? Every single hand went up. So I used an example in my past. I had a friend named Mark, and I had an intimate partner named Alyssa. I was with her for 4.5 years, kind of tail end of high school, early college days. And it was this sort of triangle of toxicity in hindsight. Again, at the time, didn't understand that, but now I sort of do. And so at the event, based on that definition of true friends, how many of us can honestly sit back and say, hey, looking at my past, I had friends who, number one, offer support, improve my quality of life, promote my self-confidence, provide honesty and unconditional love, and most importantly, they help me progress without concern of their own gain. How many of us can honestly say that we had friends like that? And so hopefully everyone out there, if you're not driving, please close your eyes. Think of that friend who fits that definition. Okay, that is a wonderful, true friend. Now, the next definition is a friend who gives you bad advice. Bad advice is the self-serving direction given to another for one's own personal gain from a self-reference point without the removal of personal biases. And sweetheart, at the event, you made a great example, or you set a great example, where you had a past partner who your family was biased against. Would you be willing to? Yeah,
in the event, we pretty much asked the question, who's ever been in that relationship where someone in your life, be it friends or family, did not approve? They obviously were not a fan, and they, for lack of better words, tried to kind of turn you against them. They soured you against that relationship. And because you're closer with your family and they know you, quote unquote, you trust that guidance or that feedback, and you actually choose in accordance with that. So for me, in the event, we actually talked about, anyone who, whether it's a different culture, different religion, different gender than you, or even same gender, right? Anyone have any of that experience? And hands shot up. Everyone's had one of those experiences where where your friends or with your family, they did not approve of the prospect, right? And so their bad advice ended up coming into the equation because they, quote unquote, care on you and or care for you and don't want to see you get hurt or don't want to, whatever, insert negative narrative there. And I had experienced that, and it was in high school. There's plenty of those where I have been in relationships where my friends and or family did not, quote unquote, approve and had tried to sour me against continuing that relationship, or shall we say investing in it. And at that time, it was really, really difficult because I actually ended up choosing the peppered unconscious bias advice that my family had given me. And that was really, in hindsight, very difficult, because who knows how wonderful that relationship really could have been if I did not take the unsolicited advice from friends and family at the time of whether or not I should be with this person or consider dating them or consider further investing in that relationship. And so the bad advice came from pretty much all corners, friends, family, you name it. And unfortunately, that relationship didn't really go anywhere.
Well, I'm grateful for that. Selfishly.
Same. But I'm also not, because it perpetuated an even bigger problem when it comes to racism and all that stuff.
I was only kidding. I was being, I'm of course not grateful for that. No, honey.
Well, there is gratitude because it brought me to you.
Yeah, right, exactly. That was me being playful. Hopefully that came off.
It's late. I'm sorry.
No, it is late. So I want everyone to understand. So Emilia and I are here. We're here to serve. We're showing up, but it is 10 p.m. on a Sunday.
Sunday night.
And so it's a Sunday night, and we went for a sunset walk earlier today.
But it's been a day for sure.
It has been a day. Okay, so
bringing that back into the equation, the bad advice came from all corners, and the bad advice encompassed the unconscious biases that so many people don't recognize, but our friends and our family are not weeding the garden, i.e. their minds, of what unconscious biases they have. Racism, misogyny, homophobia being many of those which people have experienced. I mean, as a matter of fact, in the chat, I believe someone had said that their father wouldn't even talk to her because she was dating a man, or I believe it was a man
of a different religion.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that. So imagine what that's like if you were actually to not have heeded that bad advice. What could be on the other side of that?
I had a client in the past who had a female intimate relationship, and she was a part of a culture that very much shunned that. And her family was looking bad to the culture. And because of that, the family was giving really toxic advice to her. And so
the family was homophobic and the culture was homophobic.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well said. Thank you. So essentially, who here, and I'm just saying this as if you're in the room, but anyone out there watching or listening to this, have you ever been in a situation where you feel like your friends or family wanted to sabotage your intimate relationship? If that is the case and you've ever been there, we want the cycle to stop here.
Yeah.
And so the last piece of this episode, I am grateful to, at this point, Emilia and I have been together almost 5 years. And there was only one time I caught myself doing what I used to do, or what people tend to do. Have you ever been in a situation where you're speaking and venting to a friend about your intimate partner? Most likely you have.
Oh, yeah.
That has happened with Emilia only once. I'm very grateful for that. I was with Kev, my business partner, Kevin, at NLU, and I remember I was frustrated, and I was venting to him about something about you, and I caught myself, and I was like, whoa, we don't do this. This has never happened. And then I immediately was like, dude, I got to talk to her tonight. I ended up bringing it up to you later that night.
Remember.
You do
so
remember
grateful.
that? Okay, awesome. And I said, sweetheart, I caught myself earlier. I was talking to Kevin about something behind your back. And I was like, holy crap, I can't do that. I got to bring this to my sweetheart. But if I circle way back to high school, college, when we didn't know what the heck we were doing, I would do that. And so if you picture a group of guys talking about their girlfriends, or a group of women talking about their husbands or their boyfriends or whatever it is, and if you've ever been a part of that, it's definitely something that can be very toxic. And so what Emilia and I want to share with all of you is, you got to break that cycle. You do not want these weird sort of friend circle triangles happening, because if I didn't bring it up to Emilia vulnerably and courageously, the chances are she's not going to improve. I'm going to stay frustrated, and then we're going to grow apart instead of together.
Right. And in those circles, I mean, you can think of like anything from Sex and the City to, I'm sure, the show Friends, where whenever you have a challenge in life, the people that quote unquote love and care for you oftentimes shift way more into the problem solver seat without any ask to do that. I know I struggled in that before when, a friend or family came to me with relationship stuff. I immediately was like, oh, I got the answers.
Well, that's also because it's your calling.
I also study this and do a lot of research. It's not just because, I just have an opinion. It's a little different there, but like, here's the thing. A lot of us end up finding ourselves on the other end of a party of what everyone else thinks we should do. But yet it's ironic, because that actually comes before anyone asking more questions and digging deeper into the context of what's happening and seeing it in a bigger picture frame. So I think that what's fascinating is not only is there this inclination of go and vent what challenges you're having to your friends and your family, not the one person that's causing it. There's a very encouraged culture to do that, because there's this huge belief that your partner shouldn't be your everything, and that's a bad thing, and that's super toxic. And there's research that we shared in the event that there's studies that have been conducted in 2014, published 2019, global study, but the UK produced it, that showed that partners who have a relationship and they are best friends with their partner are actually 2 times more happier, more fulfilled. They have longer degrees of longevity within their relationship. And so it breaks down this myth that we often have that your partner shouldn't be your everything.
Did you ever hold that belief in the past?
I did. Yeah, I did. And so that's...
Emilia and I both are guilty of that.
Definitely.
I did have that belief of... Because I would see these couples that they don't have anyone else outside of each other. And I do think that can be toxic, to be honest. It
can be very cagey.
And it can be codependent and overly done. But right. I now feel that way with you, where you are my best friend. Yeah. You are my everything. Right. You are my penguin.
Yes.
And penguins only have one mate for life, so Emilia's my penguin.
He's my penguin.
But the idea underneath that I actually used to say, you can't have your girlfriend be your everything.
Right.
And
that's a perpetuated belief system that causes you to go vent to your friends.
Exactly.
Because at that point, if you didn't have your friends to be there to just let you vent and express and then try to give you bad advice that they never studied, what other purpose would they serve in your life? They would actually have to be a true friend. They would actually have to shift it back into that definition that we brought in at the very beginning of this conversation. They would actually have to be there and just listen and ask further questions or do something different than just give an unsolicited opinion that our friends and our families are really good at doing.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to jump on here and talk about the Conscious Couple podcast that I've been listening to for a while now. And I absolutely love, whether you're single, in a relationship or not, this is the podcast for you. I mean, think about it. If you're not in a relationship, look at it like building a house. If you were going to build a house, wouldn't you get the instructions, figure it out, look it over, start practicing some of the little things so that once you start doing it, it's going to be the best house that you ever built? Or if you're in the house already and there's issues that are going on with it, aren't you going to try and fix them? Or think about it while you're building the house and the base layer, there's some issues there. Don't you want to correct those and fix them before you work on the rest of it? Have a great day, guys. Awesome podcast.
The through line here is I'm super proud of that, because the not going to vent to other people about our relationship before we even talk about it is such an underrated thing that you and I have grown so much because of our growth orientation and our open-mindedness towards feedback that has allowed our relationship to be what it is. And be mindful. We actually said in the event kind of a play on words when it comes to the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. We call bullshit when there's bad advice unsolicited like advice that's given from corners of our worlds to us about our relationship. It's
our families say things, our friends say things, everyone has their own opinion.
Yeah. Without
and you can
context.
take and you can take in some of that data, but you got to look at their relationship. And I often joke, I say it's kind of like going to a personal trainer who's wildly out of shape.
Right.
This person isn't leading by example. You got to look at their relationship.
Right.
And not only that, but at the end of the day, only you know your relationship, and you have to self-advocate.
Yeah.
And sweetheart, I have one more question. I know we got to jump, but I wanted to ask you what it's like to be in a relationship where I don't go to my friends about our relationship. And
you are my safe space. And that is something that is one of my most prideful experiences and I would say life accomplishments that I'm continuing to accomplish and invest in, because in past partners, I actually just wrote an article about this, the courageous conversations that we never had the courage to actually communicate.
Put it in the show notes.
You can put it in the show notes, but essentially a lot of my past, I had been with partners where I never felt like they could ever have been my safe space. And I didn't know it at the time, but it's so obvious looking back, because whenever we had a problem, I would literally, as if it was like food, it would get in my throat and I would have to swallow whatever my truth was, and I would have to suppress it, sweep it underneath the rug, modify who I was or my response or my reaction emotionally, even though my intuition was like, say something. You have to say something, advocate for yourself, stand up for yourself. And all of my past partners were that. So I always had to go vent for my friends. They were there to be that support leg that I didn't have the courage to kind of bring back into my relationship. Now, what my experience is like is being able to have a safe space and so much trust built within our relationship to where I actually can learn who I am in a way that doesn't have to walk around the insecurities of my partner, because I know that you are open to feedback, you are growth oriented, you have a growth paradigm, and you actually really care about what's being said and how it's being said more than you care about your own ego, more than you care about your own benefits, more than you care about your own personal gain. So a true friend is not only in our relationship, but within my partner. And that is like the most extraordinary life experience, more happy, more fulfilled, more in love than I've ever been. And had I taken advice from some people at the time of you and I even meeting, you and I would not be together, because
isn't that wild?
It is wild and just blows my mind because of the fact that like so few people actually know what advice is actually good for someone, because they have no idea what is good for one other person. And oftentimes there's a lot of people that find themselves in the bucket of thinking that they know what's best for someone when in reality, they just don't. I
told this story a few episodes back. I'll go brief with it because I know we got to jump. But I had a past partner who, when I was 26, I got in a car accident, and I got the second chance my dad never got. And if you don't know my story, my father passed away in a car accident when he was 28, when I was 2. And when I was 26, I got in a bad one. I was physically okay, but it rattled me.
Yeah.
That's when I shifted all of my focus from improvement and achievement to self-improvement, personal development. And so after that, I got really fulfilled really quickly. I was super into growth. And my partner at the time, her name was Courtney, her friends were concerned for her. And they literally talked to her and said, "What? That must be exhausting. He's like happy all the time. Why? He's always happy. He's always on." Like, and I remember thinking to myself, isn't that a good thing? If you should have been concerned, it was back when I was in a dark place. Not when I'm super fulfilled and super happy. And so anyways, just advice needs to be, you need to be very careful. Yeah. You need to filter it. Who's it coming from? Where's it coming from? Is it bias? Is it bad advice? Are they true friends? Do they know the real you? Do they know the real partner you are dating or married to or in a relationship with? And if you can't check all of those as yes, 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 and the ironic thing about this, the paradoxical thing, is the person whose advice actually is sound is the one person who is probably helping you guide yourself and not actually unsolicitedly telling you what you should or shouldn't do.
Yeah, that's what we do with our clients. Like every single time we even go near that like pull of like, you guys should really consider this. It's like, whoa, I mean, check in with your true self. Like this is the positive, this is the negatives of potentially given the data that you've given us.
Yeah.
Please make sure it goes through your own decision-making process. And that's something that I'm so proud of, the fact that we can give that now. There was one thing towards the end of the event, we challenged every single person in the room that I want to bring this to the listeners of the wider audience of the global community that we have, which is how can you be more discerning with the influences that you and your partner has? Just
do you want me to define discerning from the event?
Yes, please. And why I mention this is because a lot of us understand and have heard the old adage, you are who you hang out with, or in my father's words, if you hang out with shit, you smell like shit. And with that being said, the discernment is so much of a skill that we can all develop, but not if we're first looking at the BS that's coming in as BS. If we're looking at BS as, flowers and rainbows and butterflies because we believe that that person loves and cares about us, regardless of how it might impact them, we might actually be hooked into a narrative and a belief and into a decision-making structure that does not actually serve our very own best interest, long-term, short-term, what have you. So discernment.
Discernment is the ability to make a smart judgment about something, like disregarding the advice a friend gives you about your relationship. Okay, so the long and short whole synopsis here is, do not let friends that do not know what they're talking about give you advice on your relationship. Be very, very careful. Protect the garden from the pesky bugs that are trying to invade it. Is there anything you want to add, love, before we get out of here?
I would say go to research the statistics of people's influence around the divorce rate, and if you have a friend that's divorced and how that's going to potentially impact you.
Do you want to share it real
quick?
Look
up yes. In the event, we mentioned this. People who have friends that are divorced, and this is not saying we're anti-divorce.
We're not anti-divorce.
Not at all. Genuinely.
Divorce.
And
we're not anti-divorce.
It's super important to recognize the power of our influences. If you have someone that has gone through a divorce who's within 1 degree, meaning a friend of yours or a family member, you are 73% more likely to get a divorce because things are normalized. That is more accepted and what have you.
And you're probably getting bad advice, potentially.
But very well, potentially. That said, you're 33% more likely to get a divorce if someone who's 2 degrees away from you in terms of social influence, which means a friend of a friend or a family member friend or what have you. Think about how close that is. You're 33% more likely to get divorced. And that translates to also a worse relationship, less intimacy, less emotional connection, like just a whole bunch of relationship lessness. And so why I mention those stats is because there's statistics and there's research and there's clinical data here that there are experts who really bring this to the forefront and help to educate, like we are here on this podcast, people who are struggling. We often say in our relationship talks events and in our episodes, I say this a lot, our deepest pains come from people and the decisions that we make when we interface with people, especially with partners. That's some of our deepest exiles, our deepest pain points. And so if we turned a little bit more towards the statistics and the research and the data and the experts and the professionals who do know this stuff, they study it in and out, they can't get enough of it, that would be the world that would make this world a better place that has so much less suffering within it. So I encourage you to turn towards that when you are struggling, turn towards a professional when you are struggling in your relationship. The last person you should, from my perspective, given this data, or would benefit you, is to turn towards friends and family members. They should be the last people on your list, given this data.
And AKA, if you find yourself venting to a friend or a family member, to lock it up, go see a professional, and or have the courage and vulnerability to talk to your intimate partner about it in a safe space.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, love. Anything left to add?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, that was excellent.
Awesome.
It was really, really good. All right. Thank you all for listening. As always, appreciate you so much. Check out the link in the show notes for Relationship Talks coaching if you need someone to bounce ideas off of. Also, check out Emilia's article as well about courageous conversations. That also will be in the show notes.
In addition to the show notes, you'll see a third link, which is our invitation to you to join our 35th Relationship Talks.
So if you missed the 34th one, now's your chance to redeem yourself.
Click that link to register. We would love to have you there. No camera, no mic on. If you don't want to, if you're not comfortable, that's totally okay. Totally celebrated. Just the fact that you're there getting around other conscious couples and conscious singles talking about things that really, really matter to help your love fern, to put a play on words with this movie that we got here, so that your love ferns can grow. And it's going to be May 16th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the topic itself is going to be how your self-talk is sabotaging your relationship. More often than not, we have thoughts that are going on around 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And oftentimes we are thinking the same thoughts every single day. 90% of the thoughts are literally the same thoughts. So with that being said, what if those thoughts, right? What if 90% of those thoughts were the things that you were ruminating on from maybe a friend said, I don't know if that person's ever gonna be good enough for you, or I don't know if you should really go out with that person, or I don't know if your husband can really XYZ, right? Fill in the blank. What if someone's little seed that they planted came into the relationship? That self-talk might be perpetuating it, and the way in which you view yourself can be one of those zippers that unfolds the relationship. So always gardening. We talk about gardening a lot. Gardening the mind, gardening the self-talk, so that it's not sabotaging your relationship, is what that event is going to be all about.
Well,
so we
said,
hope you join us.
I'll never forget when you shared that people are so afraid to get COVID, but we need to be just as afraid of getting mind viruses.
Yes.
Bad belief systems, bad advice from friends.
Terrible dialogue.
All of the things. Okay, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening. As always, it's not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is a Lazaros 88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.